Yes, here we go. It is the TNF. The night we hand over the keys to you. So get your points in using the hashtag TNF so I can keep track of what ones are wanting to be discussed, etc. Judge joins us as always on a Thursday. Apologies, we weren't here last Thursday. Life gets in the way sometimes, but we're back this week. Mark, your picture is cleared up right on time for the show. Just fucking mate, crystal clear, looking gorgeous. What's happening?
I don't know what's happening, boys. My Wi-Fi is acting a bit slow just now. I think me and you spoke about it off air. I'm expecting anybody to chat with door in a minute now to try and sell me super fast broadband. It seems to always happen when your broadband plays up for a couple of weeks. But anyway, I'm good. How the hell are you, mate? Are you all right?
Yes, mate. All good here. All good here. It's been good to get Jonathan back on the bus a couple of times now. I think he's just dusting off the cobwebs, mate. I think he'll be a key player going forward this season. We had his sort of Chris Commons, I think, season last year. He just disappeared, didn't he? Remember when Commons did that, his second season at Celtic?
Right.
He's kind of had that, but no, he's back firing, and it's always great to have you on the Thursdays as always as well, and hopefully we can keep that going, mate, throughout this season as well, because I know your views are all well appreciated on the bus and certainly get plenty of traction as well. And of course, when we're doing all that good stuff now, Mark, I need to talk about this TikTok thing, mate. The last one that I've posted to you, I think it's when you were saying, there's, the gap isn't maybe as big between us and Rangers 2 weeks ago. You were saying that, and like you were just highlighting facts. Obviously that it's not as big as what it seems. We didn't beat them in the league last year. Things like that. It's closer than what it is. We can't be complacent. 13.7 thousand views, mate.
Oh, is that good? Is that good? Aye.
Oh, well, I'm guessing so, mate. I think that's a lot. That's a high number, isn't it? So I know definitely.
Sounds like me, mate. Aye.
We've only got I think 300 followers or something like that. So that.
Well, I was walking out the house and my neighbour stopped his motor. He's like, Mark, you're on Rangers Twitter, and then my barber texts me, you're on Rangers Twitter, and a guy in my work says to me like, oh, you're on Rangers Twitter. I went, oh, listen, I know. I said, if he's actually watched maybe an extra 3 or 4 minutes either side it, it's not that I'm panicking about Rangers, I'm panicking about Celtic, increasing these small margins rather than letting these small margins turn into something Rangers can catch. But
it was your wee white eyes, I think, that were
slagging me rotten, mate. I love it, but I love it when they slag me, mate, to be honest. I mean, there's a guy, I don't want to mention the guy's name, but there's a guy on.
Go for it.
I think his name's James Forrest, but he gets slagged to fuck off for the Huns. But so there's always having to make me look decent, you know what I mean? Because he looks like one of the tinfoil hat guys. But some of his stuff I have seen clips saying he does talk about a sense, but then he starts slabbering about things, and then Rangers fans clap him and all the rest of it, and it's quite funny. But I don't mind it when I pull some cracking faces, man. But I don't mind it, mate. I can hardly see an inch in front of my face, so if my eyes are looking, that I can barely see your silhouette at all. My eyes are really bad at the moment, actually. I need to get back and get different glasses again, to be honest.
But it helps all the traction, all that stuff, though, as well. Do you know what I mean? It gets the word out there about the channel and stuff. And I mean, I'm just abusing you. Don't get me wrong. I'm just pimping out Mark. You know what I mean? On the TikTok behind his back. But
you're right, mate. I mean, if I'm. Every circus has got like the Elephant Man, right? And I'll be the Elephant Man of this show. I don't mind, mate. I don't
People
mind
watch it, mate, for a reason. They're obviously engaging still with what you're saying. That's how it gets that traction, because of how you deliver it. So
there you go, then, mate. There you go.
One of my favourite things about it as well, very quickly before we move on, is the comment where the Rangers fans will come in, right, and they'll be like, "Oh, why are they so obsessed with us? All they do is talk about us." And I'm always like, the irony of a Rangers fan commenting on a Celtic podcast, saying Celtic fans are obsessed with Rangers. I'm like, how are you here? And one of them wrote back, it's called the algorithm, mate. And I'm like, that's your algorithm that's leading you to Celtic clips, mate. So, again, who's obsessed with who? Everyone, of course, you take an interest in what's happening with your rivals, as do they. So, of course, we're going to talk about it on the channel. And like I say, I get on the Bhoycie Bus TikTok. I think it's the.Bhoycie with the H.Bus, because I'm going to clip up plenty of Mark tonight for you all to enjoy and get them shared. Also, remember as well, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. And remember, please do hit the bell so you don't miss any shows. Like I said last night, me and Mark will be pretty consistent with the Thursdays. But Jonathan and I will be either a Monday, either a Tuesday, either a Wednesday. I think that'll be pretty much the norm. It will not be set times or anything like that. And then I'll probably do one of my own most weeks, which again could come up at any point. So if you've got the bell hit, you'll never miss a bus live. Also, if you want to become a member, it's $1.99 a month, totally optional. Of course, content's always going to be free on the bus. Anything I've missed, piesports.com, pastry treat. I can't mind the discount. 12.5% off. Bus 1888 is the code. I think they've just probably forgotten about us now, mate. Do you know what I mean? That code's been going 10 years. But hopefully someone uses it at some point. It's better than trying to punt the old Viagra pills that we were doing for a wee spell. That was fun.
That was strange. I've got a Rangers fan in my work who buys the Pie Sports stuff and uses the code all the time.
Really?
I loves a kebab pie. He buys them all the time. He's like, I don't give a fuck.
There you go, man.
I think they're pretty dear, but I did see
they're shit hot.
They're very hard to get. Sometimes, like Tesco or Asda, I think it is, will say they'll be in stock tomorrow. And then you turn up at 10 a.m. They're all sold out. So you get trying to get the Pie Sports pies. They sell it dead quick. I think they do that on purpose, and maybe send out maybe small batches, very kind of sporadically, so that folk will get in their head space that these things are, they're a prized asset. You can't buy them.
Yes,
that's what it did with potatoes back in the day. Like, there was no farms. Nobody was growing potatoes back in the day. And what they decided to do was put a tax on it and tell everybody these potatoes were a royal vegetable.
Are we still talking about potatoes or Celtic signing policy?
The real potatoes, and what it did was what happened is people said, "Was that right? I'll grow anything I want," and people started to actually grow potatoes. But before that, they were they were pig feed at the time. Nobody was using them. Then that's how they started to come in. But anyway,
I thought you were talking about Celtic's recent recruitment drive over the last few summers, mate. When you were saying about they dress it up as prized assets and things like that, when really anyone could have got them. Anyway, we'll talk about that as well, because it's been a couple of weeks, obviously, since you've been on, Mark. In that time, we've gone tonight. Last night was a plus point. I know pre-season friendlies, if you get beat, you say they count for nothing. I think going away to Sporting Lisbon, though, and getting that result which was still makeshift Celtic. It wasn't going to be the starting lineup for the Champions League qualifiers by any stretch. You're not going to have that many subs and all that stuff either. I think it was a positive result at the end of the day, and a performance where I thought we looked more in the groove than maybe what I've expected. I don't know why my expectation would be lower, because we've got to be honest, when Brendan had his full pre-season last year, if you remember, I think that was the catalyst for us doing better in the Champions League. I really did. And I think on the downside to that, I think it highlighted what Adamida really missed as a prime example, was that pre-season with Celtic, because you've seen players come on leaps and bounds. Nicholas Kuhn's a prime example. Someone we were not convinced was going to be a Celtic regular. You then see him in pre-season and thought, oh, okay, hold on a minute. And he went, came on leaps and bounds, particularly that first half of last season. But the team in general benefited for that pre-season form, and it's good to see us sort of continue that this summer with, I think, a noteworthy away win in Portugal.
I thought it was a great one. I watched it last night, and I thought I was quite impressed with Nygren, quite honest with you. But these results tend not to matter. I do get what you mean with that, but when you win, you like to savour them. I mentioned last night on Twitter, I think it was, that I thought last season's pre-season was a perfect run up to the season for Celtic. Champions League was already set. It was already set. We were already there. But the games we played and the intensity when it got serious for Celtic, Man City, Chelsea, it really set us up for the season. And I was questioning the opposition so far. I was questioning how close it was to the season, and I just thought it was a bit of a mismatch pre-season. Like, kind of, don't know what it was all about. Maybe a PR stunt more than national football and merit so far. And I stand by that. I don't think the intensity was there in the last two games, but last night I was quite surprised, especially on the counter attack. You know what I mean? Celtic seemed to be very slick. Some of the football was really, Brendan Rodgers stuff. I thought Nygren really, I think he's going to be that missing piece of the jigsaw. Matt O'Reilly and Tom Rogic have never been replaced. You know what I mean? It's like O'Reilly did a great job of replacing Tom Rogic, and he left 10 months ago, Bhoycie, and his replacement only came in last week. And just
what would the urgency be in replacing a 30 million player, Mark? Come on, as if that wouldn't be missed.
Well, my brother sent a photograph of O'Reilly, Kyogo and Kuhn celebrating a goal at Celtic Park last season, the first 1 or 2 games. And we made £52 million in transfer fees in the last 10 months, only 3 players alone. And 1.5 million has been spent on any of the replacements. And that was only last week with Nikren, or maybe 2 weeks ago with Nikren. We hadn't made an effort to try and replace Kuhn or Kyogo yet. And the clock's very much ticking on both of them for the season starting, you know what I mean? And I still think we're way off where we need to be, Bhoycie, but the pre-season victory last night, I mean, it committed to blow for me because I did see wee clips of the Queen's Park game and I did see wee clips of that Estrella Lager, whatever they're called. It did look a bit rotten, to be quite honest with you, but Roger said after the Estrella game that he's what we wanted out of this match, we go out of this match. And I'm not a football expert. Maybe there's wee fitness goals you need to get to. Maybe there's key metrics within the game that each player has to get to, and the players were hitting these targets. Maybe that's what he meant by that comment. I was a bit confused by it. But last night I thought, I mean, I did notice this is a fatigue thing and a fitness thing.
Has Mark's stream stopped or have I'm not entirely sure what's happening here.
I did
Judge, can you
get caught out 2 or 3 times with a long ball? I can hear you, Bhoycie. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, mate. I don't know if it was us who lost you there or I just lost you, so I'm not.
Well, no, I lost. I went black, and then you went black, and then 2 weeks come back.
Right. Well, fuck knows what happened. That sounds like it was maybe at your ending.
Well, I don't know what's happened. This guy used to be pretty good, but as I said, I think they're trying to interrupt it so they can sell me a fiver, whatever. I don't know if I go it, but what I was going to say is I don't know if it's a fatigue thing, but I did notice Kieran Tierney get caught out a couple of times at the back. Bhoycie, there was one where the boy just sold him with his first touch and Kieran Tierney was spinning in circles. But I think that'll probably be his fitness now and his match sharpness. Other than that, I was quite impressed with the football last night. And Adamida, I mean, there was one he missed where he actually missed it that far that the keeper who was standing a yard beyond the goals actually caught it. It was an open goal, no, and I just looked at him. I thought to myself, if you're the answer to Celtic's question, to say Celtic's worries up front, what is the question? Because you're just no for me at all, big man. And I think Rodgers looking at another striker in Tapa, Yamada. Rodgers knows if he asked him in the quiet that Adamida isn't going to be the one to bring Celtic to the next level, Bhoycie. He knows that, so do we, I think now.
I think that's a fair point that you finished with, and we'll just go into that one straight away. I think what we've realised with Adamida is, though, even when it doesn't appear that he's been in great form at any point, had a great run, he scored goals in sort of potentially big moments. I think the Villa one obviously went on to get beat anyway, but he was basically should have got the credit for the goal against Bratislava, which was an absolute crucial moment. And of course, he's more than capable of dusting up, or topping up, I should say, his goal scoring tally domestically as well to get it up. He was 20 goals last year. I think you need players like that still in the squad. I think the 9 million thing is what comes into the frame of mind of people when they go, but we thought that would be first pick. Again, maybe it goes to show you what 9 million gets you these days, or maybe it goes to show you how Celtic's complacency in getting that deal over the line at a time that suited them for a price they thought was going to drop, as opposed to increase, shows you, how overinflated in the end that valuation was of Vida. With someone like Yamada coming in, or Yamada, I'm not entirely sure. I think Graham Terrell said in the chat last night it was Yarmada. But I think he was the sort of signing I think we needed to make last summer to supplement Kyogo and Ida. You've got that sort of maybe a bit more of an unknown quantity who's got a real chance. A lot of various scouts or Japanese football experts obviously could give glowing reports on a player like that. He's not a heavy expenditure. It would have done no harm to have a player like that coming in. It doesn't need to necessarily be him, but I think last summer because we went with just 2 strikers, remember? Because Johnny Kenny was away on loan as well, which I thought was outrageous, to be honest with you. Going any Champions League side, any side going for the domestic league title that does that, they're going to be playing 60, 70 games in a season, and they're incredibly just relying on 2 strikers. So for me, I think that I'm hoping, this is what I hope, I'm not convinced that will be the case, but I'm hoping there's a compromise with Yamada comes in as a Celtic signing to complement the striker options, and then maybe Brendan has more influence on the Kyogo replacement, if you want to call it that. I want to go back to what you said about the 3 players celebrating a goal. £52 million brought in for those 3, 1.5 million spent on Nigrin, 1.7, whatever it was. Obviously, they'll point to the Jota deal now. They'd say, what are you talking about, Matt? The Jota. Now, that would tell you everything we need to know. That would be that Celtic only are looking to sign replacements, not enhance and create further competition in all areas of the park. That's so important as well. And I think that's what I would like to see as Jota comes into, which we've seen obviously the second half of last season. It was going to be either, you didn't know whether it was Jota or Kuhn that was going to start. That's healthy. That's a good thing. But of course, they've brought in Jota because they know Nicholas Kuhn was being sold in the summer. That's just the way that is, in my opinion. And what Celtic are likely to do is only ever get your replacements, not proactive signings and strengthening and creating further depth and giving managers options. They very much, I think, look at it binary, Mark, that you'll have a first team pick option and, the one who's like a goalie, the number 2 for that role, and they'll be quite defined as opposed to having 2 number 1s jostling for that role. We don't have that across the team. I don't think it's in the Celtic board's mindset to do it. But notwithstanding that, maybe Ida's contribution last year, albeit the 20 goals, which I like to flag and highlight as a compliment, I think Rodgers would have still a good argument to say, look, I need, Kyogo replaced. Like, I need it. It can't be. You can still bring in Yamada. He can complement them. That would mean only be having 3 strikers, by the way, still of like first team level, because we're not sure whether Johnny Kenny is going to be part of that group or Osmond, to be honest. I'm hoping that Yamada's the compromise, and it's, of course, you do that one, but I want to get, you're going to help me get, my guy as well. What do you think?
Well, I think Rodgers said last night after the match, he said that the plan was to get Yamada to come in and to have a look at him. And that didn't strike me as somebody that's scouted this guy or been involved at a deep level and then seen what this guy can do. Bhoycie, that looked to me like a guy who's just been told, look, I'll be coming for Japan, he'll be here next week. And that's what it sounds like, you know what I mean? And I think Osmond falls into that category. I think he's a club signing. I think the centre back / left back in Amura falls into as a club signing as well. And I've got the fear that when the clubs are signing players behind Brendan Rodgers' back at the start, well, not Brendan's back, but when you're buying players for Brendan Rodgers in that level again, then you're getting back into the Jeremy Toljan and your Timo Weah stuff, and all the rest of it, and then Marian Shved and all the rest of it. And Rodgers starts to get a bit pissed off again, and I think that's already happening. We can see it. But Yamada, I think if he was going to come in to complement the squad, fine. If he's going to be battling Ida for second place, that's fine. We need to, as long as we get a Rodgers type starting striker. That's probably, I think Ida's biggest issue, I think, with the Celtic fans is, I don't think it's a price tag. I think it's what the price tag entails. Like, you're expecting somebody that's come in at that level to be, if not the first choice striker, to be the battling first choice striker. And had any level of competent striker been involved in Bhoycie, I don't think Adam Weidlich gets a lot of game time last season for Celtic. As soon as Kyogo left, he became the first team striker by default. You know what I mean? And I think if you get a £9 million player or a £5 million player, for that matter, who's supposed to be first team ready, if they come in at that level and you can accept the fact that they're by default, it tells the same story that the guy's not good enough to be the Celtic starting 11 striker. You know what I mean? I think, you look at even this century, we've had a lot of great strikers for Celtic, but we've also had a lot of great depth in that department. And I don't think he walks into many Celtic squads in the last 20, 25 years. He just happens to be there, the new boys, at a time where we've got nobody else. And what I saw last night with Johnny Cairney is, and the Queen's Park game, I've seen the clips of that and all, that boy looks hungry, Bhoycie. I mean, your second goal last night, he carried the ball 50, 60 yards. He got the break of the ball at the halfway line, but he still had to put his leg out there to win the ball. And then he carried it. He waited his pass perfectly and gave it to McGowan. The exact same thing happened a couple of minutes later with Marco Tilio was running through 1-on-1, and 2-on-2, whatever it is, and he squared the ball to Johnny Cairney. And when you seen the replays, Johnny Cairney wasn't happy with the weight of the pass because it meant the defender was able to come back and cut it out. And that's a guy who's hungry for more goals, a guy who's maybe at the next level. If what he was certainly last season, he's want to score goals. He's want to impress the manager. I don't think he's want to push a button on a loan move to Bolton or anything like that. If he's given this summertime and to prove himself, and that's fine with me. And I think Rodgers mentioned it when he spoke about Austin Edouard. He said, look, I think this is a message for Austin Edouard more than anybody, but he said, look, he's not on my radar. I'm looking for hungry, fit players. That doesn't strike me as a Austin Edouard type player. He's no hungry. He's not that fit look neither. You know what I mean? And look at Johnny Cairney. Keep forgetting that name wrong. He seems to be at the very least a hungry striker, Bhoycie, with that bit of the teeth. You know what I mean? I think he's looked pretty good. But see what I've saw him. I've seen folk on our podcast. I don't mention it because they're doing my nut and they're now watching them. But the 3 or 4 of them were like, nah, get him out the door, right? Based on nothing. But then when it comes to this boy Osman, oh, fuck up praises at the Film Academy. Boys, the 100 guys at the Film Academy now working in Asda, by the way, just so you know that. But give this guy Osman, give him a start, give him a chance. I mean, hang on a minute here. Cairney was playing in Ireland last year, scored goals in Europe last year. I probably scored Conference League goals, right? Which is still a higher level than some of the Scottish stuff we fucking
by miles.
By miles. And he's been tarred with a brush where he will never be good enough for Celtic, no matter how many pre-seasons. This is his first pre-season at Celtic, probably. It's his first pre-season. He's not going to get a chance. Whereas guys like Osmond, who's never ever kicked a ball professionally before, he's only, I mean, Premier League level 2, boys. That's maybe, I don't know, League 1 Scottish stuff. Maybe if you're being serious, playing against men, seasoned professionals, maybe go down to the academy teams in England and beat most of them. You know what I mean? Let's be honest here. It's not a silky football at the Chelsea academy. They're not that very good at that age. You know what I mean? So it's not for me, boys. I think that for me, Cairney should be in the squad. I think he should definitely get a run of games. But I also feel like he should get the Adam Ida effect and opposite. I think his price tag and his background should not count against him. Whereas I think some people think that Ida's price tag and background counts against him as well. And I think there's got to be a bit of balance here where we just forget, same with Engels, we forget how much a player costs. Just what is he doing on the park? What is he giving you? Don't care if he's Scottish, English, he's Spanish. Just the guy's merits on the park. And I think I tend to do that quite a lot, where I think, what was this player giving us? I forget how much he's cost a lot of times. And what you might find out is if we just kind of get to a base level now with the Celtic players and just watch them for what they are. Some of the players that are like McGowan, there's a space for him in the squad. But see guys like Cairney, I think he needs a chance to create a space for them. I think getting rid of him just now and wholeheartedly going into a season with Adam Ida would be a big mistake.
Yeah, I hear you, mate. I hear you. I'm going to come onto that point about Johnny Cairney. Just Michael Cairns just became a member and saying he loves the channel. So a big shout out to you, Michael. Nice one, mate.
Cheers, mate.
I mean, with Johnny Cairney, I mean, this is the fickle side of it, though, Mark. Effectively, if he were to get said opportunity, right, and elevated into the realm you're talking about of being an option off the bench more and treated more as a first team sort of player, that would then mean there is no room at the inn for another striker unless Ida's going to go and you're going to have to replace him. They're not going to go with 4, are they? I'm I'm not saying that as a bad thing, because I totally take your point on Johnny Cairney. If ever there was an example of doing your apprenticeship out on loan and fulfilling what the purpose of sending a player out on loan to get great experience was, it was competing at the top end of a table domestically, under pressure each game, like he was at his club in Ireland, and playing European football at a level, by the way, that was actually ideal for him to get integrated into that sort of football as well. What an amazing beginner's guide to European football, then playing some very decent teams above SPL level, by the way. Trust me, most of them would have been
But
right.
would he have ticked off all his boxes, boys? You see, before he went out on loan, he must have been given like a kind of like a player a profile. This is your KPIs. We want you to meet this. If one of them was top goal scorer in the league, and another one was score goals in Europe, impose yourself on defences. If he did all the three things, and still is looking like he's nowhere near it, what chance have players got when they go out on loan? Because what questions would you ask a club? Because there's that guy sitting there. He told him to go away and do that. He done that probably and a bit more. He's come back looking hungry. Scored his first start at Bustalgia, which isn't easy for a Celtic player. And if I was a player at Celtic, I'd say, well, what's the merits in going out on loan? Because the guys who are succeeding with your pathways are coming back to close doors.
Yeah, I mean, you could flip that argument to play devil's advocate as well, though. We go out the Champions League playoff qualifier, and he's instantly one of the names listed off that we had to count on for such a game of such magnitude, which would happen.
Yeah, it's true, mate. True, mate.
And I'm not saying that again, that nothing against Johnny Cairney, because as I say, I'm not. Maybe it makes more of a question mark over why we need to sign someone for the J League who's, I think, 4 goals or something last season or this season or something like that. Where Johnny Cairney could have been that guy, you know, if indeed Brendan, as he's alluding to, is looking for a Kyogo replacement still. If Celtic are paying $1.5 million, is that expected then that Yamada sort of takes that sort of third place if there is such a queue, and Johnny Cairney's pushed down it again? You know, it's a difficult one. It's a balancing act, and also from the manager's point of view, as much as he says he wants to develop, he loves developing players and stuff. You know, fine well, Brendan Rodgers isn't going to settle for Johnny Cairney being that option right now without getting another striker. And so there's two sides to it, unfortunately. And I think it's a poison chalice at a club like Celtic. They're trying to develop homegrown young players, because we've seen the reactions, mate, all over social media. By the way, ourselves included at times, when Celtic have won 10 out of 11 games, but the 1 out of the 11 that they drop points in, we've fucking been far more animated about that and critical. So when do you get that? And, you know, that's when you're 8-9 points clear in the league. I mean, I remember the Dundee United away game, December time, I think it was. Was it December? And it was...
One way through, aye.
And it was like, fucking Rodgers out. Some folk were saying in this live chat. You know, and I'm like, you see, when you think about that sort of, that viewpoint, what time does a manager think of, you know, I've got time to bleed in, you know, a youngster here and get to grips with it? Because those sort of levels of pressure and scrutiny don't actually exist at most clubs, Mark.
No.
They just don't. Even at the big clubs, there's still more understanding and patience with drop points, you know, that can occur. With us, it's now, I think particularly it's ramped up since we've made treble sort of, you know, something that I became accustomed to. And I think that's made it harder to try and do things like get Johnny Cairney's as much minute time as maybe Brendan in an ideal world would like. And also he's got his own reputation to protect as well. A manager's career is a solo career, mate, as well. It's not just a one club one. It's a solo career, and the CV needs topped up, and it's not failed his last 2 attempts, which it would be, of course, because if you go back to AEK Athens, it would be failed his last 2 attempts to get Celtic into the Champions League at the, you know, his first hurdle, albeit the last hurdle in this case, but it's still his first. That's not a great look, you know. So if like anyone can win in Scotland would be the narrative. So he's, from his point of view, got to make sure he's done everything in his power to make sure he ticks off those boxes for, if, as I expect anyway, he departs next summer. His reputation is as intact and glowing as it possibly can be. And if he don't make it through those Champions League playoffs, unfortunately, it's a red mark on it, you know. if that's a saying. But you know what I mean? I think it was a black mark, I think. But anyway, it's I think with stuff like that, that's the difficult game to balance when it comes to Johnny Kenny. Anyway, we've got loads of points coming in, Matt. So thanks everyone for interacting on the bus. Plunge is saying, good performance and result last night, but now it's time to spend the money and bring in some quality. I mean, it's undeniable what we've seen from Negrin. I've said it last night to Jonathan, Matt, I expect him to be good. As you've rightfully pointed out and then highlighted even more so, 52 million of creative talent has left Celtic in the space of 12 months. Each window, the last summer window, the January window, then this window, you've lost O'Reilly, then Kyogo, then Kuhn. I would like to think whoever it is Celtic identified for it, and then you take Mark's point of remove the fee, right? Cool. I expect then whoever it is that's coming in to be a creative force in midfield for us as a player expected to replace one of these three with numbers, with assists, with, as I say, creativity and imagination in the park. I expect Negrin to be good. That's not me trying to ramp pressure on him. I would like to think, though, that, we're going to be bringing in quality to replace the top drawer quality that we've sold on. And, of course, KT, we know that's a quality signing. His CV speaks for itself. And luckily for us, we've got, obviously, first-hand experience with the lad. But that's two bits of quality. But it was first-teamers that have left again in the shape of Greg Taylor. KT replaces and upgrades, no problem. Nicholas Kuhn, Negrin replaces, still to be seen whether he upgrades. Fingers crossed, of course. Then you've got the Kyogo one that's not been. And that's before you've even looked at, are we a better squad going into 25-26 than we were on the opening day of 24-25? No. Which for me should be the prerequisite of every single season. As a board and as a recruitment policy of any football club should be, no matter what your trading model looks like, and no matter how susceptible you are to bigger fish coming in, or not even bigger, just clubs with deeper pockets, so you're susceptible to your key players going, that doesn't mean you allow the first team to regress. That means you get that sort of business if it means sales done early, and you have lined up quality replacements that'll have maximum effect on the team and make it smooth. Then you look at what enhancements could you make to the side, by the way. We never talk about enhancing the squad. We talk about replacing players all the time and then try to bring those players back once they've not done as well at the other club. We're never talking about enough about having three options at centre forward. I know we have tonight, but in general, in fact, when you suggest it, if you remember the Jordan Larson chats we had a couple of years ago, Mark, everyone poo-pooed the idea because that would mean we would have three first-team strikers and no one can do that. Bizarre to me how conditioned people are now. But the enhancing the squad bit gets lost, and it'll take Celtic all summer instead, I think, to replace the aforementioned players that have left.
Well, I don't think they're going to even try. I mean, just quickly on Negrin, I don't see him as a Kuhn replacement. I think he's maybe a direct midfield replacement. I think he's a number 10.
O'Reilly replacement?
I don't think he's in the midfield. I don't think he'll be like a winger. I don't think Kuhn was an out-and-out winger, I suppose, but I don't think he's going to be Kuhn's replacement. But I do get what you mean on that, you know what I mean? But
replaces O'Reilly, though.
Yeah, he replaces O'Reilly. Aye, I know. That's what I mean. It took him 10 months. I mean, they're still not replaced. I mean, Kyogo left, we need a replacement. And then, again, Kuhn's left for a replacement. So that's £50 million. I say we've spent less than £2 million. Regardless of that, you look at the squad depth, Bhoycie, and you're right. Like you're wanting two players in each position, and then a backup to the players. But we've not got that. I think the only position you could say, yeah, that looks good, is the keeper. You go, well, Sinisolo, we saw last season, he's probably good enough to be number one. Casper, good enough to be number one. The rest, it's a cliff on a lot of that. You know what I mean? It's like, I love Ralston, but Johnson offers so much more than Ralston does. Kieran Tierney's no go anybody behind him. That defence won't even get into the centre backs. Midfield, nobody can replace McGregor. Nobody can replace Atati. And then your Engels, your Bernardos, McGovens. They are three, in my opinion, players who are fighting for second choice. We should have better than three of them, boys. So let's be honest. But they're good to have in the squad. And then up front, I think nobody can compete with Maeda or Jota, and then the rest is just not being filled in yet. You know what I mean? So I think there's gaps out of that squad, Bhoycie, you know what I mean? At news of time, they told us to. I knew it was coming. We were told to wait till after the World Club Championships, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. But that's been finished now for nearly a week, and we're seeing nothing now, boys. We're seeing no strong links with anybody. We're seeing no 5, 6, 7, 8 million pound players. Not just to satisfy people like me who want to see blood and want to see money spent. I want to see Celtic go to the next level, and that requires money, boys. Neaglan, we go on the cheap because his contract was allowed to run low. Fine, we accept that. But that's a stroke of luck. They're not going to happen at every transfer window, boys. We've got the money now. I spoke about it earlier on. I told you about it earlier.
See, just quickly, sorry, Matt, but see, just quickly before you go into that one, I know where you're going. On the Neaglan one as well, knowing Celtic, you'll have been on the scouting list, right, for a year, say, right? So that tells me as well, they chose not to sign him in January for what would have been, say, 3.5, 4, when we're still in the Champions League. Think about that. There's no way he's just arrived on their desk, that name.
No, that doesn't happen. So
that means that window they chose to wait till this one to get him half price. And that's when you're in the last 24 of the Champions League. And I'll say it every show, I think, probably up till we get put out the playoff, please don't. You've got to treat the best competition in Europe with the respect it deserves. But I go on, because I know you've got some interesting stats for us as well, mate.
Oh, they're quite right there about the Champions League, boys. This is the most important qualifiers we've had in a long time. This year and next year is so important to how Celtic look for the next 5-10 years. People haven't got that in their brain yet, how important these next 2 years are going to be, boys. For our club coefficient and the country's coefficient, they're going to be seeing 3 qualifiers for the Conference League coming to the second place in this league next season. And we're going to see 3 qualifiers come to the champions of this league. And it's so important. It's beyond just playing against Real Madrid getting beat 5-0. Now, this is like an important part of Celtic's status in the game just now, is us qualifying the next 2 years, boys. It needs to be... And
winning the league. Because if we don't, Rangers qualify automatically.
If they win the league for the next 2 years, boys,
they're straight in.
They are going to be what they're already set up for just now, and they will improve, and they will start to bank higher transfer fees because of improving. And they play in the Champions League, 110, 120 million pound, plus they've got the coefficient points. They would get an extra 10 million pound on top of Celtic anyway, should they qualify. They would have the previous board would push them so far above the horizon, Celtic when they see them again for years. They'd have 10, 15, 20 million players all at that squad. Now, I think that's going to be a bit pie in the sky for them. I think they're going to be kind of a Celtic model, buy for 300 grand, sell for 3 million. That's what they're going to be playing like for a while. Yeah, they need to get used to that. But I was just going to say earlier on, just when people are talking about like folk like myself moaning about 1.5 million pound players and the club's ambitions, there was a post on Twitter the other day there, and I'll tell you exactly who was it posted. I want to give the guy his recognition. It was a grand old team. He posted some stats, and we'll put it this way: 78% of the SPFL's wealth together is owned by Celtic. So 78% of the full league's money Celtic have in their bank. In fact, we made £3.17 million in interest last year. £3.17 million is more money than 9 other teams have in their bank in the top league, just on interest. In fact, Celtic, if you put the top 4 divisions together, Celtic own 80% of the full country's footballing wealth within their bank account, without their overdrafts, share issues or nothing. That is the level in which Celtic are playing at against these other teams. There's a graph there which you might see that the green one is Celtic, the other colour is the rest of the country. In fact, Rangers sit 6th or 7th in terms of net cash in the bank. And this is according to the club's own accounts, every other team. Now, that's all good, and that's all something you can talk about in the pub to boast the Rangers fans about. I see that as a negative, because I'll tell you why I think that's a negative for Celtic. Celtic are stockpiling cash because they're waiting for the rainy day. Celtic are actually sitting waiting for the rain to start. And they've got their jacket off and they've got their shorts and t-shirt on. They're expecting Celtic to not qualify for the Champions League rather than gather that money and fling 25% of this wealth that's getting bigger and bigger. Fling 25, 30 million at a transfer window. Celtic can never guarantee qualification. We don't know what level we could walk in and buy Declan Rice. But what Celtic can do is Celtic shop in certain markets, Bhoycie. And when they enter their markets, they should be knowing that they've got the ability to buy their players. And we always haggle that much. The players in that market tend not to companies. But we then enter the race for a player. The first question should be to the manager, do you want him? He's within your budget. And the next question should be, how long is it going to take to get him? That should be it. No swaying over money, hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, or a 3-4 grand a week difference in salaries. You go there and get them. That may be the difference. That may be the difference between that better. Like you look at Greg Taylor last year, he sold that goal against Bayern Munich. The 9 seconds of the half, the ball just hits off him. It ricochets. Kieran Tierney doesn't make that mistake. He's sharper than that. See that 5-10% extra bet value a player, Bhoycie? They can get you through a European tie. That is how on the balance it is. And Celtic won't.
It's an interesting point. That see what you were just saying there though about the market they jump into. I don't know if you've seen a couple of comments recently regarding Celtic from foreign shores. I think it was what is his name? Is it Celtic, something like that? He was the Bratislava striker. And he'd said the move, he was absolutely convinced he was going to Celtic in January. And then it turned out Celtic weren't willing to pay the money. It took him months to get over it. So obviously, we've done the tapping up bit, which every club does, by the way. But we've obviously sold him the dream, right? He's got his heart set on it. Then we've not been willing to pay the spondoolies. He was quite open and honest about it, that it took him a long time to get over it. The other one that was interesting, and obviously we have done business in the deal we did for Nawrocki recently, and of course Juranovic, Legia Warsaw, and there was someone in their board or the chairman, someone like that, someone could correct me in the comments, who'd said Celtic are very different to most clubs in how they deal in transfers. They were essentially saying they felt like the person they were dealing with, I think they've used titles that Celtic don't really have, like sporting director and stuff, but take that bit away. It sounded like whoever it is you initially deal with, it then gets passed on to either their superiors or those more entrusted with. I think money-wise, I think it's like everything sounds good. You've got someone who, say it was Tisdale right now, for example, who's going, that's value for money on that player. I know the market. I know what these players go for. That's a good deal. And then, so Legia, say it was Legia, for example, are in, having positive talks. Okay. And then Tisdale says, right, that's the last you'll hear from me now. It's over to, the hierarchy to get it over the line. And they said that, that it was a very unusual way of dealing with transfers. And, this club doesn't have an axe to grind, or any sort of benefit in saying this. I don't know where the interview's sprouted from, to be fair, either. But it didn't surprise you when you read it. It sounded very familiar. And I think that maybe is the case. And I've said this before, you look at that Lee Congerton who became a laughingstock at Celtic, and then I read an article, I think I spoke about it maybe even with you on the channel about 6 months ago, and I said, fucking hell, I didn't realise he was responsible for all these signings at other clubs, and he'd been at Atalanta when they had their sort of, they got to in fact, they won the UEFA Cup about 12, 13 months ago. So all that, he'd been involved in their recruitment. There was another couple of big clubs, and I thought, it's funny, he was a joke figure at Celtic. I wonder if Celtic like that being the narrative, that guy's the joke figure. Because I dare say it was Lee Congerton who was recommending, was it Piccini, Castagne, who of course ended up at Leicester when Congerton was there, so you can join those dots. Edouard, there was another one I was trying to think of, but anyway, I think these players are probably a guy like who is involved in that sort of day-to-day, that's their job. They can tell you what represents value and what doesn't. And their viewpoint, okay, albeit it's not their money they're spending, but it's also not Peter Lone's money either. I mean, he's responsible for what happens with it, but it's not his money. It's money that fans are putting in left, right, and centre on the latest merch, the sambas, the baseball tops, the lot.
Well, just quickly,
I think go on. I was just going to say, sorry.
No, carry on, mate. No, you carry on.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think what's frustrating is you've got someone like Lawwell who is employing these people, by the way, for their viewpoint, their expertise, and then kind of has firstly the autonomy to override any decision, and secondly trusts his judgment on what represents value for a football player in 2019 back then, 2025 now, over someone whose profession it is. Right, and I think that's kind of a slap in the face and insulting. And to be perfectly honest with you, completely looks like there's another agenda at play there. That you know, whether it's KPIs that they've got, you know, on balance sheets, I don't know. Or it's stuck in their ways and they're just becoming that wee bit dinosaur sort of levels. They've been there that long that, you know, time's moved on. And I wonder if that comment by Legia Warsaw guy, Mark, made sense. You can guess who the parties are, but, you know, like a Lee Congerton, for example, saying Castagna 9 million and Peter Lawwell saying, I think he's only worth 5. So that's what we'll bid. You know, like who's, you know, it's madness. Of course, Castagna ended up joining Leicester, I think 19 million, by the way, a year later. But that's just one example, and I'm making fees up, obviously. But what I'm trying to get across is the guy who you're employing to fulfill a role, Mark, is basically scouting proper talent, agreeing realistic fees with other clubs or what they think it could be, or at least entertains chat about it, goes to his superiors, and it's a polar opposite angle that they come from. It baffles other clubs, it stops deals happening, and it's the ones who aren't the football guys that make the football player decisions. Strange.
Okay, it's very strange. I mean, I think Lawwell just hires these guys for a box ticking exercise. I don't think he actually values their opinion. Probably a bit like a kangaroo court. Anybody to stand in front of Lawwell, I don't think they leave the room believing they've been listened to. Bhoycie, I really doubt it. You know what I mean? Like, I just got to say, I heard that point on a podcast the other day, and I thought it was an excellent point. One of the guys was saying that Celtic are signing players now, and then they're putting them, their interviews are behind a paywall. Celtic are forgetting something. These are our players. This is Celtic. This is our players that we're paying for. Really, we're the ones that's paying to watch. We're watching the TV. This is our team. This is our club. There's a blanket cunts in that and wearing suits in a boardroom, and for them to put new signings behind a paywall and need to pay Celtic TV or YouTube money to watch interviews for a player's first interview, it's just ridiculous. I mean, is that how low this club sunk to, Bhoycie, where we're putting players' first interviews behind paywalls? And it's not even that. Like, surely as a football club, as a business sense, they want to see Celtic fans build relationships with players as quickly as possible. It makes sense to do that.
Every other club is going to the access all areas route, Mark.
Well,
you look at all the documentaries that have been done. I'm not saying I want to go as far as that, but the world's opening up, not shutting its doors.
Well, a few years ago, if you go back to Angie's first season, when the club needed me and you and everybody else to back the plan, every podcast apart from us, and just so you know, it's because we were the only ones that tell the truth. Don't listen, sit there and have cups of tea with Peter Lawwell and all the rest of it. The 4 times aside, right enough, they get kicked out for being honest about Peter Lawwell. But anyway, they were getting access every single pre-match. They were getting access. Every single one was getting access to a new player. Then it went down to rotas. Then it went down to every so often. Now it's very rarely you see Celtic media get invited to things. It's very rarely. And that's not because Celtic forgot the world's going forwards. It's because they want to go backwards. They want to push the tides back. Bhoycie, and they can't do it. I said it before. The only way we can see proper 21st century progression is when some of the guys in the boardroom leave the club in a box. I'm sorry to say that, but the only way they're going to see progression is when some of these guys kick a bucket. And that's a horrible thing to say, but their vile nature and their vile opinion they've got to the support isn't going to change, Bhoycie. I mean, you look at I think it was 2 years ago, the AGM. Somebody asked Peter Lawwell a question. The guy got escorted out the building. I mean, you've got the Prime Minister sacking 4 4 MPs and sacked another 3 ministers because they went against his wishes. Celtic are the same. You know what I mean? If you go against the party line, you're out the door. And this is what's going to happen with Celtic. I mean, you get guys who are shareholders legitimately asking questions about Celtic. I mean, this is a club who gave rid of Lawwell during the COVID, then brought him back in as a non-executive, then quietly turned him into an executive. And then before you know it, he's the man running the club again. You've got a chief executive new in situ who's never, ever speaks public. When Lawwell was there, he was in front of the camera at every signing, every big press conference, every big merchandise renewal contract, you name it. And just quickly talk about, I've mentioned this stat before, this genius Peter Lawwell. He was a financial controller when Celtic nearly went bust in the early 90s. Celtic's short-term spurt in the early 2000s started the day Martin Hill took over with Chris Sutton and Alan Thompson, useful Haring for the Euros. 2003, Lawwell came back to the club, and slowly but surely we began to downsize. Began to be a club who's scared to spend upwards of their top bracket of players, money on players. And Lawwell always had us back, Bhoycie. That's why I genuinely think Celtic won't go forward until he's had his last days on this earth. And I hope I get to see it, to see Celtic, what it's like without that guy. I really do. It's my one wish. But I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon. That's the only bad point about it. But Celtic...
already has. He's non-exec.
Well, he's back. No, he's back, hasn't he? No, he's just the chairman now.
It's funny they've changed that title.
Well, never even... Did they tell you, Bhoycie? No.
Because...
Why would they?
That laugh, I mean... I don't know. Do you remember that fucking... I mean, that was one of the infamous, I think, fucking Twitter fucking pylons that I got, but fuck that. It's not like it's a hardship, but I was trying to explain to people... But it was like, it was Celtic fans who just were so in denial. You know, everyone's going great on the park. So basically that means anything that the board did, which the board knew they would react like, would be hunky-dory and nothing to worry about, rather than just scrutinising it with still the same balanced, maybe cynical eyes, but at least clear ones. Instead, because there was a love-in for Postecoglou and the type of football we were playing, it meant, and Lowell knew this, that when he returns as non-exec chairman, the majority of fans will lap it up and say that's okay because he's non-exec and fall for it. And I tried to explain so many times, as someone who's had business and all that shit, mate, right? Again, I'm just half a brain, right? I said, if he's the only one at the club with chairman in his job title, he's the fucking chairman.
Aye.
And then before they defended it,
we did a podcast.
Mental at me.
See that night? Me and you, and I think it may have been just me and you. It was did a podcast, and it was the headline was Lawwell's return or something like that. And me and you just spoke about how this is going to see the club go backwards again. This Ange progression that we're buying players early, this is going to stop. And me and you took some abuse. What you talked about, he's a non-executive chairman. He's not going to be making decisions. He's going to sit at the end of the table and just nod his head. A lot of shite, boys.
Then you fast forwarded to Angie's second summer, and it was chalk and cheese.
Aye, I remember that.
Chalk and cheese.
There was a guy outside. There was a guy outside. I think it was Rugby Park last year who chinned Lawwell outside the stadium, and there was a video going about, and there was folks saying, "Isn't the time or the place?" Like the guys wearing a Celtic suit at a Celtic match. That is the only time you can talk to him. That is the time, and that is the place. But there was folk defending Peter Lawwell. He shouldn't get that at his work. Well, neither should the manager, who was called a prick, or the left back, who was called a fanny, or the striker, who was called a dud. That's football. They paid a lot of money to take the flack. But there was folk saying, "Oh, you don't do that at football." But you do it in Asda. When you see him in Waitrose, when are you supposed to chin Peter Lawwell? Because the guy's getting away scot-free, that he's running his club like it's his own piggy bank. And I am fucking... Every time I open my Twitter page and I'm seeing Celtic stories, and it's like, on loan, a free transfer, a £1.1 million
exploring options.
And I might be rank here, but if we not got a qualifier for the Champions League, who we've spoke about a couple of minutes ago, if I'm aware of the fact that it's so important to Celtic's short-term future, surely to fuck the club no, Bhoycie. Tell me I'm not an idiot here. Surely the club know better than me, and the club they know that there's dark days ahead for Scottish football. Should we no qualify for group stage?
You've covered that though. They do know that. Hence why they've got the big bounty of cash sitting there for when it happens.
Aye, and that's but
because that would be called frugal and sensible.
This is when they look good, boys. This is when they look good. Because best case scenario for them is we don't qualify. Some of the money, the millions
of pounds. If it weren't for us, though, we'd be in trouble. But luckily,
look at us.
Totally,
you give that pot. You talk about. So we spoke about 70% of the wealth in Scottish football belonging to Celtic. Can you imagine putting £10 billion in Arsenal's bank account tomorrow? If you're talking about them owning 70% of the EPL's cash, Bhoycie, they would be so far in front, it would be untrue, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yet Celtic with the same relative wealth compared to everybody else, are now, quite frankly, without a shadow of a doubt, in a title race. How can they possibly sit there and justify a club with such an advantage that it's unfathomable that you lose? How can they sit there and satisfy themselves that we're in a title race and we're buying players who on a good day Aberdeen could afford to buy?
Yeah.
I just don't understand it, Bhoycie. And there's so many folk in podcasts especially, they're doing my tits in a few of them, who are sitting defending the club's strategy like Kuhn is a great deal, or Ray is a good deal, Abad is a good deal. They're no great deals. Buying players to sell at profit is good in paper, right? But only if that cycle keeps turning, Bhoycie. See, if you start just to pick off the quality, you're going to end up with a weaker team season out, season in.
Yeah, the team seems to be becoming secondary.
The Celtic's a
big player trading model's not a fucking trophy, mate.
Well, see that graph we're talking about. There'll be Celtic fans that be sitting buzzing about that, but I see that. I can see red flags all over that. I can see us. You remember 2 years ago, Lawwell sat at Celtic Park in the AGM. He said, what you look at everyone, what happened to them? This is our buffer for when the rain comes. Boys, I thought COVID was a tsunami of rain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought we're through the worst of the worst time. I thought, what could be coming that Celtic would need to worry about £100 million being in the bank? What's that buffer for? Then, before you know it, 2 years down the line, the coefficient rules change a wee bit and it becomes clear as day that Celtic are in a bit of a quagmire now. Celtic can be all in this year, or they can be all out. You know what I mean? It's really important that we get things right this season, boys. It's so important, and yet I don't think a lot of people are seeing how important that is. And it's them or nothing.
What folk don't understand is, right, with the point of having this nest egg, right, the exact reason behind it is it allows Celtic to not adapt to improving scenarios such as automatic qualification for the Champions League 3 years in a row. Yeah, that's an improvement on your fact. That is something that you know for a fact by winning the league. You've known all summer you're in the group stage. What feeling? And that's money banked, guaranteed, done, right? But by Celtic making sure they've got this nest egg, what they've done is never had to adapt their transfer policy despite better surroundings, better environments, and better financial sort of reward coming from being in Europe's premier competition. And by not adapting, one day it will come back round the other way that formula works for Celtic because, hey, that's been 2 years with the Champions League, but we're still able to get you the same level of expenditure on players that we were when we were in the Champions League. What other club could do that, eh? That's the honest, like, that's how it works. And Martin Weir comes in. That is true, mate. Just think on what I'm saying there. You know, Martin Weir as well. Great point here. The club should be having assets, not loads of cash. That's the other flip side people forget. You want us just to waste 10 million quid and all that, or 20, 100 million. Well, no one wants anyone to waste anything, frankly. But what I would like to think was, if Celtic spent 10 million quid on a player, 15 million pound on a player, we'd have a minimum after a year at Celtic of a 15 million asset on the park. That's on then Celtic to try and increase on that 15 million. The 50 million doesn't just disappear into fucking dust because you spent it. And I think folk missed that point as well. So I'm glad Martin's raised that.
It's a great point, actually.
I think that one, you look at how they're working the PSR and all that, and a lot of it, or even during the COVID time, like, you know, they had to have certain payments made. And I think one of the things in England was the players, the players were getting overvalued by certain clubs, so it made it look like their books were better than what they were. So they had assets on paper that maybe was a bit of falsehood, but that showed you what sort of a tool that is. You know, having, I'm not saying falsifying them, but I'm saying that shows you the degree of importance that is. That if Celtic were to go big chunk, Dermot Desmond was meant to be tight. Dermot Desmond was spending 70% of Celtic's pot on transfer fees and wages. 75%, easy. When you look at the fees and you look at Celtic's other revenue streams, how are we breaking the British transfer record for a defender and Alan Stubbs, £4.5 million, when we had an Umbro deal, I don't know, 40,000 season tickets, something like that. We had no Champions League football. We didn't have the Sky money. How you know, and he was called tight. So I don't understand how we could have 100 million now, be spending the same fees we were under Fergus, and that's not getting critiqued at all. But the best bit is what people forget is the missed opportunities over the last 20 years to have made that Champions League money time and time again and far more often. And by doing so, giving yourself a chance to progress further in it. That's a sporting thing, which it should be all about. But if you want to get into the business thing and you think they have been brilliant with business, the money might not be on paper what they've missed. All you need is a calculator. It's not difficult to see the missed opportunities Celtic have had by not investing properly.
You mentioned that you can get a calculator and you probably the 10, 11 times we've missed out the Champions League under Lawwell. That's maybe £300-400 million there. But the way I see it is they've robbed Celtic fans of 30, 40 games of Champions League football. Forget about the money. Forget about why are we watching Celtic to see a Celtic in the park. That's what, and they're robbing us out of that joy, time after time. Boys, I'd be fairly satisfied every summer if I thought Celtic did their utmost to make Celtic better. That's all you can ask for, really, boys. I mean, things will fall through. You will get bad windows when players come and you think they're good and they're not as good as you expected. You got to accept that as a fan. But I don't think any fan can accept it. That's new twice. I had twice now in the last three windows. The clubs had to apologise to the fans for the transfer business. Is that good? Is that a good business strategy? Is that? I mean, Celtic have got a commercial side to the business, and I'm pretty sure that there's people running that. I'm pretty sure they're quite astute at their jobs. But it seems to me as there's too much focus on that than there is on right. What's next on the agenda? The football. The team now. What's first up on that agenda? The team should be the number one priority. Everything else should just follow suit. And I mean everything, boys. They spent £10 million on that training centre down the bottom of the road there. I see it all the time. Supposed to have been finished in February. What's happening to that? Very strange, bizarre situation there. Was this just like some way of spending some money that they're just wanting ready money and so they can say on their books, we've bought this for the Youth Academy, we've bought this for the women's team. Seems a bit of a waste of money, and if you're being honest with yourself, a bit of a strange waste of money if you're asking me. I thought it was going to be the next step to bring in the next year of players through the system. Boys, they hired a guy straight away. They hired Dan O'Day to be the pathways manager, and nobody came through. They'd have hired Sean Maloney to be the pathways manager, and nobody who's on the list already will come through next year either. It's a pure fallacy, boys. It's a pure joke. We've not got joined up thinking anywhere within the club. And
I think they could land lucky with Maloney very quickly, just because of his previous experiences are actually quite impressive. Assistant coach of Belgium when they were ranked number one in the world.
I think the job's redundant, boys. I think it's redundant.
He's managed over 100 games. But again, the thing is, it would be Sean Maloney even if he hadn't had that background. That's the frustrating bit. See, if he didn't have that CV, they would still employ him. Do you know what I mean?
I think the job's redundant. Remember with Stevie Frail in the youth team? Stevie Frail was a a brilliant manager of Scottish football. He managed Hearts. I thought he was a good coach. I mean, the boy at Falkirk just now, McGlynn, he was at Celtic. I think he was just a scout.
Right.
But he had a lot of good thinking people at the club. But it's a redundant role if the players are coming through to begin with. But if the players only getting the opportunity to take them through, I'm no one advocating for you to take them through, boys. Personally, I don't care. I just want 11 players, no matter where they're from. I want the best 11 Celtic players they can afford. I don't care if you're from Coatbridge or Columbia. What the fuck is this rabbit on in the back here? Hang on. Fucking shut up, man. Sorry, it's some neighbours in the back.
That's just live fans, mate.
Well, it's probably crows out there crowing away. Stay tight, all that shit. But anyway, the other day there, you can ask Alana this. There's a fire at the back in the garden, and I've got you can't see the next door neighbour. I went, what's going on here, right? And one of the women came in the corner and she says, "Oh, we're making naan bread." First of all, the South Indians eat naan bread. They're no of that persuasion.
They'd set up like a tandoori, like.
No, boys, see they do this once a year. They see that anything, it's our culture. See anything they don't want, they put a big circle and their big circle around it and they set fire to it. And these cunts are trying to tell me they're making naan bread, and they don't even eat naan bread.
Naan bread.
The Pakistanis don't eat naan bread. That's an Indian thing. It's a South Indian thing for a start. And these cunts are out there fucking. Anyway,
but must be good naan bread to go to that effort. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Must be some. I'd ask for a bit.
Fling your sofa.
She called her bluff. I should have said, I love naan bread. He's a bit. You know what I mean?
You can't actually see. You can't actually see the neighbour. I've got my deck in.
This is an episode of Cribs with the judge.
Aye, but I'm just saying, right? That's I don't know how I get into that, but they're talking a lot of shit now. I'm trying to do a podcast.
We do it every Thursday too. Right, final point. I'm going to redo it, and it's JM in a nutshell. We will have a much better summer window after this season if we get tanked in the league. Totally backwards thinking. He's probably right. Everyone, I see the live chat going on. Everyone's saying about this amazing window that Postecoglou had. I think it was a very successful window for Postecoglou. I think he was only allowed the autonomy because it was default. Because the house thing had fucking fallen apart.
It was a mess. There was nobody there. There was nothing.
And the squad was a skeleton squad. So they had to count on him. That's not what they wanted to do by any stretch. And of course, the season before we'd lost the league. So everything was desperate. And I think JM's right. I mean, I think they would be far more proactive if it were to be this season Rangers do win the league, which would mean automatic qualification for the Champions League for them now for 2 years, which I think people need to get that point in both this league title race this year, if there is one. I mean, I know there'll be a lot of people convinced there isn't, considering we won it by 17 points last year. But regardless whether it's tight or whether it's not, the magnitude of winning this league title again is massive. And do you know how sad it is? It's so that we can have a chance of getting the rewards. It's really to stop Rangers getting guaranteed rewards. And you know, this is where I can even laugh at myself. I mean, this time last year I was praising them, saying the coefficient club, you know what I mean, doing the wee bit, keeping Celtic at the top. And once it's sort of emerged that the individual club's coefficient is going to have such a strong influence on what your qualification metrics are if you do have success domestically, that is kind of spat in my face a wee bit now. Do you know what I mean? And I could take that on the chin. And Rangers are now going to reap the rewards for numerous sort of decent runs in Europe, whether we like it or whether or not. They're still in the quarterfinals of European competition just last season. We've not won a knockout round in 21 years.
Well, I mean, you look at since they came back up in Gerrard's first season, whatever it was, they've been in latter stage European football every single year, apart from that Champions League season. Apart from that, they're granted the last 32, the last 16, year on, year out. And that begins to bulge up the points. I mean, the good thing is, I think a coefficient point is the exact same in the Conference League as what it is the Champions League. So, us beating Real Madrid is great for us, but if Hearts or whatever it is beat some shite in the Conference League, we still get another point on top of that for the country's coefficient, and that's quite important just now because although Celtics is pretty poor, really, the country's is really bad, Bhoycie, and we will start to have less qualifiers for the full country the higher we go up with the coefficients, and then that's when our coefficient kicks in. On top of that, you know what I mean, we'll get the Champions route, or we might just play one qualifier rather than the two, or whatever. So the both of them needs to wash each other's hands. But I think it's so important that for Celtic to win the league this year for us, because I want to win the league. That's the most important thing to me. But I'm thinking about Celtic's short to medium term future, because lose this league coming up, don't qualify for this Champions League this year, you can start to see the club's, I think, evil plan of regression with substance to come to fruition, where you will see your top level player being 8, 9, 10 grand a week and all the rest of it. That's the sort of things that will come into play, Bhoycie, without a shadow of a doubt. You're going to see us replacing Rodgers with the next Dialer rather than the next Ange. That's the reality of it, Bhoycie. You know what I mean? Unless we meet these markers. I've always said to you, I'm not a big, massive advocate for us getting to the Champions League because I think it's mere games that make it beat and all the rest of it. But it's so important for our next 5 seasons that we get there this year. It's so important, mate.
Yeah. No, on that note, we will call it, and you've made a lot of good points.
It's not even a question.
No, you're absolutely spot on, mate. Absolutely spot on. We just lost you a wee bit there at the end. I don't know what happened, but anyway, you're back.
Oh, it's just Wi-Fi, mate. Sorry.
How was it cutting you off, mate? I just realised it looked like it interrupted you, but it wasn't coming through. Anyway, we will call it there. That has been the TNF. Thanks. There's 130 odd watching live, so a big shout out to all you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Remember, give us a like, give us a share, hit subscribe, hit the bell, all that carry on. And look for us on TikTok with the next clipped up controversial comment by the judge. I'll be scanning for frantically tonight to post. All right.
Tonight, fuck's sake, Neighbours and Lawwell and Italian, you name it.
I was just counting those views, mate. Counting those TikTok views when you were going. Right, okay, we're out of here. See you later.